Bi'ur Mishnah Zayin. Going to the next Mishnah, Mishnah Zayin. That's a nice one. Amat Hamayim. You have a river, a small spring of water that goes through your property. Right? You can take from it on Shabbat. No problem. Right? Amat Hamayim Ta'ala. You have like a channel. She עוברת בחצר. It goes through your courtyard. Now, we're going to see there's a rule about a river, not about a pit. I don't know why. That's your question. A river, if it is 10 tfachim deep and 4 tfachim wide, is, even though it's in your private domain, is considered to be a Carmelite. It's not in your. It's considered to be out of your domain. It's a Carmelite. A Carmelite is an in-between state. And in a Carmelite, you're not allowed to carry from a Carmelite to your yard. Yeah, it's one of those in-between states, a Carmelite. It's not Reshut HaRabim, neither it is Reshut HaYachid. And by the way, we can see this. Like water rights, also if you're here in America, it's like funny, water rights. Even though you have a river running through your property, not always you can take the water. Sometimes the lower stream guy can say you're not allowed to stop the water, you're not allowed to change the shape of the water, you're not allowed to dirty the water. It's not just yours. You can see it has a different thing to it than private property. But it has to be at least 10 by 4. Yeah? 10 deep, 4 wide. Via muka 10 טפחים ורחבה 4. It is 10 deep and 4 wide. שאפילו כשהיא עוברת ברשות היחיד, even when this stream goes through the private domain, דינה ככרמלית. We're going to consider this spring of water like a Carmelite. הואיל והיא נמשכת מן הנהר שהוא ככרמלית. It is just an extension of the river. And the river is a Carmelite. In other words, the water over here was, 5 seconds ago was out of your property, and 5 seconds from now it's going to be out of the property from another one. So it's not considered to be your property almost. So it says, Ein memal'im hemena b'Shabbat. You're not allowed to take water from this spring, from this channel, on Shabbat. And bnei hachatzer shoavim min hamayim, the owner of the courtyard, not allowed to take water from it. שהרי אסור להוציא מן הכרמלית לרשות היחיד, because they're taking from a Carmelite into the private domain, which is not allowed on Shabbat. אלא, but they can get out of it. How do they get out of it? אלא אם כן עשו לו מחיצה גבוהה 10 טפחים. It says, you know what they can do? They can do the same trick that they did with the well. What's the trick? They can make a mechitza, they can make a boundary to it. 10 tfachim. The boundary has to be how tall?
They have to do all the way.
No, just above the spring. We see.
No, the string is running in the property.
Yeah, you're not separating it from the property. Once when it comes in, once when the water comes into the property, you put a mechitza above the river, like a mechitza, or in the water, and one of them.
The string goes this way, the mechitza like
That's right. Once on this way, when it goes into the property, once when it goes out. In other words, you're signaling that this part belongs to this courtyard. You're not making it. You said this part is a private domain. That's what you're saying. Yeah, like you're cutting off a piece to make it private domain. Betoch ogna. So they have to put it, this stream is going to be deep a little bit, right? It's all the time. The spring is not overflowing. So it has to be within the hole. This 10 tfachim has to be, the mechitza has not allowed to be just like a fence. I don't know if it has to go inside the water, but it has to go inside the ditch. The ogna is the ditch itself. Like the well, the water is up to here, and the ground is here. From the ground to this is organ. This is considered organ. That's right. Inside whether it has to go into the water or not, we're not sure yet. Right. Maybe yes, maybe not. But it has to go underground. Let's call it under the ground level. Where are they? בתוך עוגנה, על פני רחבה, כמו ששנינו בדין בור, במשנה הקודמת. Just like we said in the other Mishnah. Where does it have to be? That's your question, are you? בכניסה וביציאה, when it enters the property and when it leaves the property. Yeah, it doesn't have to go all the way. In other words, it doesn't have to run parallel, it's just a little bit over here and a little bit over there. במקום שהיא נכנסת לחצר, in the place that it enters the courtyard, או במקום שהיא יוצאת ממנה, in the place that it leaves the courtyard. כדי לחלק בין המים שבחצר, you want to divide between the water that is in your private domain, ובין המים שמחוץ לחצר, between the water that is the river that out of the well. ואף על פי שמחיצת החוצר עוברת על גבה, and even though that you have a fence going on top of it, אינה מעולה, that's not good enough. It's like Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. It's above ground, and we're looking for a מחיצה below ground. שכן צריכה מחיצה מיוחדת. You need a special מחיצה, שתהיה ניכרת שנעשתה בשביל מים. It has to look like it was done specifically for the water. רבי יהודה אומר, Rabbi Yehuda says, כותל שעל גבה, it says the fence that's on top of it, כותל החצר העובר על גבה, the fence that is the regular fence, תדון משום מחיצה. He's exactly like he says before, that should be enough like the mechitza. Why you guys, if you just need to hacker seeing it, that's good, it should be enough. דינה כמחיצה לאמת המים, this is enough like a מחיצה for this water. רבי יהודה הולך לשיטתו משנה הקודמת, he goes exactly the same opinion as he went by the well, שאין צורך במחיצה מיוחדת. You don't need to make a special boundary for a well. You can use the same boundary as your regular boundary. And the Tanakama says, no, the regular boundary is not enough. Regular boundary is on top of the ground. We're looking for something below the ground. Rabbi Yehuda says it's enough for both on top and the bottom. Tanakama disagrees. אלא מחיצת החצר כבר מבדילה בין המים שבתוכה ובין המים שמחוצה לה. The מחיצה, the wall is enough for both of them. And now Rabbi Yehuda is going to attack the Tanakama. Amar Rabbi Yehuda said, Ma'aseh be'ama, it says, I know of a case from previous generation that the sages acted according to me. It says, well, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Ma'aseh be'ama ba'amat mayim, I know of a case of a spring, of a river of water, shel Avel, of a city called Avel. עיר בגליל התחתון, it is a city in the lower Galilee, ומובא בברייתא בגמרא, and it brought down the ברייתא in the Gemara, שאמת המים נמשכה מאבל לציפורי, that you have a river going all the way from Avel to ציפורי, ועברה בחצרות, and she went through courtyards, all the way through. And it says, היו ממלאים ממנה על פי זקנים בשבת. And I know that people used to take from this amat hamayim on Shabbat, and the only mechitza they had was the walls. They didn't have a specific mechitza inside. So here's all your theory. Tanakama, you have a nice idea, but I have a proof from the previous generation that my opinion is correct. שהחכמים שהיו שם התירו, the sages that were there, they permitted, למלא ממנה בשבת בחצרות בלי מחיצה. They allowed to fill from it on Shabbat, for the courtyard took from it without a specific mechitza. They just used the wall boundary. והרי ראיה, and here I have a proof for my opinion, שכותל החצר דינה כמחיצה למים, that the wall above is good enough also to go down. אמרו לו, the sages, don't think that the sages were afraid of this question. Of course, they're not going to be scared. Today we know, because the opinion is like them. אמרו לו חכמים לרבי יהודה, the sages said to Rabbi Yehuda, that was a special case. Why was it a special case? מפני שלא היה בה כשיעור, because this river did not have the right measurements. He says in order for the river to be a Carmelite, it has to be 10 deep and 4 wide. If it's less than 10 deep and 4 wide, it's considered to be Rishut HaYachid, private domain anyway. You don't need, it's on a Carmelite, and then you don't have this problem. And we know that that river was less than 10 deep or 4 wide, whatever the case was. מה שהתירו שם הזקנים למלא מאמת המים בלי מחיצה, it says the fact that the elders over there permitted to fill up from this spring of water without a מחיצה, מפני שהאמה לא הייתה עמוקה 10 טפחים, או שלא הייתה רחבה 4, because it was either not deep 10 or not wide 4. שבחגון זה אין אמת המים בכרמלית, אלא כדין המקום שהיא עוברת בו. Then it is considered to be like the place it's in, which happened to be at that place that they were taking. It was private domain. שאם היא עוברת ברשות הרבים, דינה כרשות הרבים. That spring, if it goes in the public domain, it be considered to be public domain and not כרמלית. כמו ששנינו, like we explained before, we already covered it. It says, רקק מים ורשות הרבים מהלכת בו. It says there was a swamp of water and public domain goes into that swamp of water. הזורק בתוכו 4 אמות חייב. If you throw inside of it 4 אמות, you're obligated. וכמה הוא רקק המים? It says, and how much is רקק המים? פחות מ10 טפחים. It says, less than 10 טפחים. Because if you're in a Carmelite, you're not going to be obligated. You're not allowed to do it, but you're not obligated from the Torah. ואם היא עוברת ברשות היחיד, דינה כרשות היחיד. And if it goes through the private domain, then the law it is like a private domain. מטעם זה, this is the reason, היו ממלאים מאמת המים של אבל בחצרות. That's why they were allowed to use that particular spring into the courtyard. שהרי הכל רשות היחיד הוא. Because that spring of water, that river of water was considered to be private domain. ולא משום כותל החצר שעל גבה. And you didn't even need the wall that's on top. Even the wall wasn't there. Even if there was no wall, you could still carry from it. Because it's your private domain. Yeah? It's not the wall. The wall didn't do nothing. אבל אמת המים שאנו עוסקים בה, but we're not discussing your אמת המים, רבי יהודה. We're discussing a proper אמת המים. A proper word, a proper river. היינו שהיא עמוקה 10 טפחים ורחבה 4, that is at least 10 deep and 4 wide. הואיל והיא רשות בפני עצמה, because once it becomes a Carmelite, an independent domain, ודינה ככרמלית, it becomes a Carmelite, אין ממלאים ממנה בחצר בשבת, you're not allowed to take from such a river on Shabbat, אלא אם כן עשו לו מחיצה גבוהה 10 טפחים, only if you make for her a specific boundary, בכניסה וביציאה, in the entrance and in the outer, and the boundary has to be not top boundary, it has to be a specific boundary, which means it's a below ground boundary. בגמרא מבואר, the Gemara discusses, שאם עשו לה בכניסה ולא ביציאה, what happens if you just did one, just when it enters and not when it leaves, או ביציאה ולא בכניסה, or just in the exit and not in the entrance, אין זה מועיל כלום, it doesn't help. שהואיל והיא מחוברת מצד אחד למים שמחוץ לאים, because it's connected, so called, to the water that outside of the city, הרי הוא כולה כרמלית, it still becomes כרמלית. You need to close it within your private domain. So it's not connected to public domain on any, or another domain on any edge. Okay, let's do one more.
Technically, you don't close it.
Yeah, it has to look like it's closed. It has to look like it's closed. Again, because when it comes to water, the sage says people need to drink on Shabbat. We're not going to make their life too miserable with aruz. That's the idea.